Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
The week. I'm so happy to see all of you. I appreciate you being here. My name is Esi Lewis, and I am the Chief Diversity Officer for Ulster County. It is a pleasure to be here with you all and to be in this position in this time in the world. But we are very lucky to be here in Ulster County, so thank you for joining. And I'm going to do the land and labor acknowledgement. In the spirit of truth and equity, it is with gratitude and humility that we acknowledge that we are gathered on the sacred homelands of the Manunsi people, who are the original stewards of this land. We recognize also the lives of those who were enslaved on this land, who built our economy and our infrastructure without payment. And I am now going to present to you the County Executive, Jen Metzger, to give us some remarks and our Juneteenth proclamation.
Thank you, Esi, and hello, everyone. I am truly honored to join everyone here today for this important observance and celebration. Juneteenth is more than a commemoration. It's a powerful reminder of the resilience, struggle, and ongoing fight for justice. Also known as Freedom Day, Juneteenth marks June 19th, 1865, when freedom finally reached the last enslaved peoples in Galveston, Texas, more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. But the significance of Juneteenth extends far beyond that moment. It calls us to reflect on the truth of our history, acknowledge the injustices that persist today, and recommit ourselves to the work that still needs to be done. Education and truth-telling are critical to the fight for justice and for a more equitable and inclusive society. So much of our history was nearly lost, but thanks to the dedicated research of the County Clerk's Office and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, we now have a public archive of historical documents and accounts that shed light on the county's history with slavery and the resilience, accomplishments, and contributions of Black Americans to our shared history. I encourage everyone to explore that project at uctruthandrec.ulstercountiny.gov. Should have put that on the slide. This is an incredible resource, this website, and I really encourage everyone to explore it. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to Chief Diversity Officer Esi Lewis for organizing today's event, Restorative Justice Coordinator Kim Mapes for hosting us, and New Paltz, a high school teacher who teaches Black history among other social studies fields, and also Truth and Reconciliation Commissioner Albert Cook, who we'll be hearing from shortly. And actually, I'm not even near the end of the list. I also want to thank County Historian Eddie Moran for sharing this essential history, Reverend Evelyn Clark, and Honorable Judge David Gandin for inspiring us through song, and Human Rights Director Joe McDonald and Human Rights Specialist Kathleen are with us today, and I want to thank you for the work you guys do every single day to protect human rights and educate our communities about those rights. Together, we continue this work of honoring the past and shaping a more just present and future. I want to read to you all a proclamation today in honor of this observance. Whereas on January 1st, 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation declared all enslaved people to be free. However, the horrors of slavery continued to exist as the information was withheld and not made known to enslaved people in many places. And whereas on June 19th, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, carrying General Order Number 3, and announced both the end of the Civil War and slavery and ordered that those being held captive are now freed men. And whereas Juneteenth became a symbolic date representing African American freedom, first celebrated in 1866 as a time to bring community together to create traditions and share culture, history, and prayers. And whereas this important date for freedom in America and history as a whole was not federally recognized until June 19th, 2021. And whereas despite the advancement of civil rights and enshrining freedom and equality for all, our society has much work to do in ensuring equality, protection, and empowering and celebration of the African American community and their important contributions to our society. And whereas we are committed to continuing the fight for equality and justice for all people, to celebrate the diversity that enriches our nation and promote a racially just society. Now, therefore, I, Jen Metzger, Ulster County Executive, on this 19th day of June 2025, am proud to celebrate in honor of the emancipation of all Black Americans and recommit to eradicate systemic, procedural, and institutional racism and inequality that will not be tolerated in Ulster County and must always be fought against everywhere, and declare in the County of Ulster, June 19, 2025, Juneteenth. Thank you so much. And I'd like to give this to you. Thank you, so much. Now we'd like to bring up Evelyn Clark.
Thank you, Jen. We're going to sing the Black National Anthem. We have the words up for you. This song was written by the brothers Johnson, James Weldon, and Rosalind Johnson. You don't have to stand if you're home. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat has now our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, Keep us forever on the path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land.
So as I was saying, wanted to give a sense of the specific events that lead to the end of enslavement here in Ulster County. And in one sense, those are events that take place earlier, enslavement ending here legally on July 4th, 1827, and continuing functionally here through 1848. But I think in another sense, it's so important for us to talk about that because my guess would be that probably most residents of Ulster County would be pretty surprised to hear that enslavement lasts here as late as 1848. A kind of just way to put that in perspective I like to often share is that if you were born on the day the last person in Ulster County was freed from enslavement and you tried to join the Union Army at the start of the Civil War, you wouldn't be old enough to fight. You'd be 13 years old. So, right, we can think about the fact that just mathematically, almost every person who fought in the Union Army to end enslavement from New York lived to see that enslavement take place in their own home. And I think it's important we look at the events that lead to that ending. And so first, I wanted to just give some context very briefly. And just acknowledging that enslaved African people have been not just present, but have been integral to constructing what we now know as New York from its very beginning. In just the last year, in a kind of testament to how important ongoing research is, we now have a date that we can say with certainty is when the first enslaved African people arrive, when the first Black residents of New York arrive. And they come here in August of 1627. From there, enslavement expands here to the mid-Hudson Valley as colonization expands here to the mid-Hudson Valley in the mid-17th century, about the time the 1650s, but a testament to the lack of documentation we have on enslaved people, the erasure of Black contributions from the historical record, even though we can say with almost complete certainty that Black people have been here since Europeans have been here in 1652. The first document we have mentioning an enslaved person doesn't come until 12 years later, and it's a reference to a casualty in the Esopus Wars between the Native people and the Ulster County government here. So again, it's so important we talk about this history. By 1790, the year of the first U.S. federal census, there were 2,906 enslaved Africans in Ulster County. And it was not uncommon in local towns like New Paltz and Marbletown and Hurley to have 1 in 10, 1 in 9, or even sometimes 1 in 8 residents of a town enslaved. And so talking then about why does this end, how does it end, and when? In his landmark work, Emancipating New York, historian Robert Gelman has this dense and long quote that I'm going to let you all read as I'm talking. But he basically argues that there's a multitude of effects that lead to the end of enslavement here. In one sense, it's the post, kind of the incubator that is the post-revolution America, right? This is a country where people in the public sphere are talking about ideas of citizenship, of freedom, of liberty. And what do those things mean now that we fought and died for those things in the revolution? As well, you have a shift here in the Northeast in surrounding states, as well as in other portions of New York, places like Rochester, against enslavement. And you have there the majority of people, public opinion, really starting to land on opposition to the system, seeing it as completely incongruent with the ideals we've just lived and fought for in the revolution. But that's never something that is universal throughout the state. And at all times, you have outside pressures from other states surrounding us and from England kind of influencing the state that this is no longer okay. And you have other portions of New York, places like Western New York and upstate New York, that are really starting to turn against the system. You have parts of the state that are holding onto it with an iron fist. And Ulster County would be one of those places. The politicians who would have been in county government at that point, the white landowners and enslavers who would have been in economic positions of power at that point, are the ones at the state level who are fighting to maintain this system, as people from elsewhere in the state are fighting to end it. And how does it come to end? Well, it's a compromise. It might not be surprising to hear based on what I just said. And they force those enslavers to acquiesce to a gradual end of enslavement that acknowledges and maintains their economic interests and also addresses a concern that those white landowners have at that point, an artificial concern, one that they make up, but a concern about dependence on the part of people of color once they are freed. And so out of these concerns, out of this compromise comes a gradual system where enslavement ends over a period between 1799 and 1827, and the last individuals aren't fully freed from bondage until 1848. And I have a quick kind of outline of that process written down below, but I'm going to talk through it a little bit more in detail. And so this process starts with the passage of the 1799 Act for Gradual Emancipation. And I have just a broad summary here. That act specifies that children who were born to enslaved mothers after July 4th, 1799, would be declared legally free. Functionally, they were anything but free. They were required to continue service to their mothers and slaver until the age of either 28 for men or 25 for women. And there is nothing in this law that specifies that enslaved people born before July 4th, 1799 would ever be free at all. We don't know that that was ever even an intention at this point. And this is kind of the most important thing to remember from this law, but it has some more specific provisions as well. For instance, as you can read there, it says the master of a child could choose to abandon the child within 1 year of his or her birth by notifying the clerk of the city or town they resided in. Failure to register the birth of the child by age 1 would cost the owners 3 to 7 years of service from the servant. The servant would then be bound out by the overseer of the poor until reaching age 21. Abandoned children would then be considered paupers and be liable to be bound out by the overseer of the poor of the respected town. And so these children are supported and maintained by the state and are actually lent back out. And this is meant to be an addressal of one of the points of contention that white landowners are using to argue against the end of enslavement. They're saying, but what's going to happen to these people of color? And this is right, a system that is built on ideology that is saying that these people are inferior. That's saying that people of color, it's dehumanizing these people, denying their humanity. Again, an entirely artificial system, but they're then using that same artificial ideology to argue against the end of enslavement, arguing that people of color would be dependent once free. And so the state addresses that. But how this comes to function is quite differently. As you can see in kind of the third bullet point there under the 1799 law, it comes to function as really a system of compensated abolition, whereby those children would be abandoned to the town and then actually indentured, lent back out from the poorhouse to that same enslaver who had abandoned them, who is now getting paid for feeding and clothing them, as well as getting the financial benefits of their service. And that's how it comes to function. That wasn't the intention, though, of the state in passing this. So they amend that law in 1802 to lower that compensation given to only $2 a month. And then by 1804, they abandoned that system completely when they realized that functionally what's been happening are just enslavers are being incentivized to legally abandon the children only to get their service right back. And then we can imagine what would happen to those children once they turn that statutory age. You've been living only in the household of the person that dehumanized your parents, dehumanized you, forced you to labor, forces you to bear the physical results of the labor that produces their wealth. As if that individual is going to maintain any quality of life for you after you reach that age, as if you're going to have the skills and the base of community support that you're going to be able to support yourself or others after that age. And so they abandon this system, and instead, I think it's really fascinating what they do. They require enslavers to teach their children to read well enough to read the Holy Scriptures before age 21, right? Thinking maybe that would be something that could assist these people after they're freed. But again, you can see that this is entirely a kind of warped system because it's based on a warped ideology, an ideology that dehumanizes, denies the humanity, and says people of color are inferior, a system that was an ideology that was created to justify this system of enslavement in the first place. And so it is kind of contradictive. It doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense. And as we continue forward, we can see what that actually would mean for people of color living here in Ulster County. This is the type of document that results from those laws. This is the Register of Slaves for New Paltz, New York. This is the only surviving register of slaves for any town in Ulster County. They all were created. This is the only one we have left. John, nod or shake your head if I'm wrong. But I believe there's one that survives from Greene County as well. And those are the only two I know of for the Hudson Valley. They would have been created in every town. And as you can see on the left-hand side here, these are recordings of births of enslaved children. I'll read one really quickly. So 1799, September 19th, General Joseph Hasbrook delivered to me a certification that he had a female, and they insert the word Negro up above there, child born and called her name Jane, recorded by the overseer of the poor, Josiah Hasbrook. Also one of the 5 most prolific enslavers in New Paltz at that point. So the people recording this are the same people that are doing this enslavement. And this page, they were all reported within a year. You see very quickly going through this document that most individuals were not reported within a year. And to our knowledge, there were no actual penalties levied against them. On the right, you see one page from the period from 1800 to 1804, when that legal abandonment system was in place. These are a list of enslavers on the left, the birth date of the children they're abandoning in the second column from left, the name of the child they're abandoning, and then on the right, when they were abandoned as well. And we can assume that most of these children are then indentured back out to those same enslavers for labor. But you'll notice that this list ends in terms of the dates in 1804, when that law was repealed. But how did the people born before 1799 become free? And what are the laws that affect people born later in this system? They amend the act in 1817 with what they call an act relative to slaves and servants. And this is the law that comes to shape how enslavement actually ends in New York. This is the law that gives us the date of July 4th, 1827 that we've likely all heard of. So in this law, they specify that those individuals born before July 4th, 1799 would be free on July 4th, 1827. Whether they were born July 3rd, 1799, or whether they were born in 1770 and still alive, they would be free on July 4th, 1827. Now, their children they've had after July 4th, 1799, and before March 31st, 1817, when this law is passed, those children are subject to the same ages I previously mentioned, 25 for women, 28 for men. But if you're born after this law, after March 31st, 1817, and before July 4th, 1827, you'd be subject to a lower period of service, 21 years, which is where we get the date I referenced earlier. If you were born on July 3rd, 1799 to an enslaved mother, you would be, 1827, I meant to say, July 3rd. You would be bound to serve your mother's enslaver as late as 1848 here in New York. And we know that that occurred, even if the intentional erasure in the historical record doesn't give us a wealth of documents to prove that it occurred. But I can give one example. This is a newspaper clipping from December 18th. That date is wrong at the bottom. It's 1898. So I apologize for that. And this is a newspaper clipping referencing a man named John Wynkoop, who was still alive and who talked to this newspaper editor at the time this article was written. John Wynkoop was born June 27th, 1827. I have said that in hundreds of tours over 5 years, and it never has any less of an emotional impact just saying those words. June 27th, 1827, 7 days, right? 7 days flashes by us like this. It means nothing. And it means everything to this man's life. And so this is our confirmation that John Wynkoop, we don't know, but possibly as late as 1848, was forced to labor for his mother's enslaver, a man named Jonathan Hasbrook. His mother was subject to these same laws. She was born in 1803, and she's actually appears in this register. I thought about putting her page in here, but I decided to put the first page instead. And so being born in 1803, she's free in 1828. Knowing her son is forced to remain in that same household, serving that same enslaver for as many as 21 years more. And so the legal date at which enslavement comes to end in New York is July 4th, 1827. That's when they stop using the word enslaved. That's when they stop using the word slave in the laws. But it always stands out to me from this newspaper clipping as well to look what word John Wynkoop uses. He doesn't say I was indentured. He doesn't say I was bound to serve my mother's enslaver. He says I was born a slave, and I was a slave. We can assume as late as 1848. And so while it's so important we celebrate Juneteenth, I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to be here today talking a bit more about the fight to end enslavement here in Ulster County. And again, just kind of summarizing all of this is it's a system of compromise in which you have outside pressures forcing white enslavers from our region to acquiesce to this system. And who are the people that bear the consequences of that compromise? They're the people of color here in Ulster County, the same people who built the county, and the same people who we all owe a great debt to today for the infrastructure, for the economy, for the political system we live under. And so I want to say thank you all for this opportunity, and I will pass it off to Albert, hopefully.
Thank you so much, Eddie, for that informative and historically based mini lecture. I think it was very powerful to hear. And I just wanted to speak a bit about the significance of celebrating or acknowledging Juneteenth as a holiday. We know that June 19th of 1865 was when the last soldiers from the Union Army liberated Galveston, Texas, and therefore the last enslaved people came under the jurisdiction of the Union, and thereby the executive orders of the president and the Emancipation Proclamation, and we're free, and that is in 65. And of course, in New York State, as was mentioned by Eddie, 1848 is probably the last date that an enslaved person was experiencing officially slavery in New York State. But what I want to comment about is the significance of the relationship between Black Americans formerly enslaved and this country. And I want to use something a little bit unorthodox, which is a speech from Frederick Douglass given in Rochester in 1852. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. It's entitled, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." And the reason why I'm picking that speech is because the 4th of July is something of a parallel to Juneteenth for Black people. The 4th of July is this moment where this country comes together, and those who received the inheritance of the revolution, which were landed white men originally, of course, celebrate the liberties and the independence, personal and national, that the 4th of July represents. And of course, when the 4th of July first happened in 1776, and the consequential Revolutionary War happened, and the events that occurred as a result of the end of that war, of course, Black people and enslaved people did not receive any of that personal liberty and or political power and or economic opportunity that are associated with the celebration. And so because the existence of enslavement and exploitation persisted for such a long time after that, it would, mean certainly that there will be a difference in the way that Black people relate to this country and relate to the ideas of freedom. Hence, Juneteenth becomes a symbol or a sign that perhaps the revolutionary ideas would apply to Black people. But in this speech that Frederick Douglass gave, he was asking the question, what is it to the enslaved person? What does it mean? What does the 4th of July mean to the enslaved? And he was bitterly regaling American society for suggesting that Black Americans should celebrate independence or recognize and love this idea of freedom that the 4th of July represented. And when I was listening to that speech, teaching it to my students here at high school just a few weeks ago, I was wondering why for time run away from slavery and was enjoying a great degree of freedom. Why would he stay in the United States and give a speech in 1852 about or even regaling the United States for the lack of freedom for himself? Why didn't he just go to Canada where he could get away from the fugitive slave law? And that choice that he made to stay and argue that Black people should be folks that inherit the rights to speak and live freely in this country produced a question in my mind. Is it possible for Black people to celebrate freedom and love this country in America? How could an enslaved person make a decision to stay and fight for freedom? What is it that that enslaved person is fighting for. And what it told me is certainly Frederick Douglass did not love his present condition where the legislation had authorized bounty hunters to hunt him down. But he was pointing in a very similar way to Dr. King to a potential future experience of engaging with this country on the grounds of equity and equality. And that future experience was something that he was holding out faith for and hope for, which caused him to believe that there was potential for him to experience that personal freedom that was the promise of the revolution. And there's another element that goes along with Juneteenth, which I think that even though that holiday did not exist at his time when he gave this speech, there's another element that goes along with Juneteenth besides this hopefulness that there would be something in the future that Black people could hold on to as a point of personal realization of the revolution. But there is this sense that Black people, through sacrifice and labor and exploitation and oppression, have earned a right to receive, just like white revolutionaries fought and died and bled into the soil, and they felt like they earned a right to receive the inheritance of the revolution. Black people have fought and died and bled into the soil and earned a right to receive an inheritance. And so he did not leave. And I think it's just very interesting. You know, the patriotism of July 4th is very different than the patriotism of Juneteenth. But it is a version that I like to speak about to my class called Black patriotism. There is a version of a complicated relationship of the love for the potential and a sense of earning the right to receive full citizenship status. And as we see in this country, that is something that is not something that is once gained and then permanently held. Every single piece of the American Revolution that Black people have grabbed a hold to is something that needs to be fought for persistently and continually, not only by Black people, but by their allies, because it is a battle that needs to be won over and over, and a dream that needs to be renewed over and over. So when I think of Juneteenth, these are the reasons why I think we need to celebrate. And we not only need to celebrate, but we need to gird ourselves to persist in the battle for the ultimate realization of complete equity and complete freedom in this United States. Thank you so much for your attention, everybody.
So I want to bring back up Reverend Evelyn Clark and also Judge David Gandin, who are going to give us a musical selection. And after the musical selection, we will have our closing from our own Joe McDonald, the Human Rights Commissioner.
I'm honored to have our Judge David Gandin, Supreme Court Justice, here today, New York State Supreme Court Justice, to accompany me. And we've sung together several times, so I thought this would be an apropos event in which to sing together again. So we're going to do a song called I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free. It's not an old song from the time that we're celebrating when Juneteenth occurred, or the time when slaves were freed in New York State, but it's a song for today. So, David. You can clap with us. I wish I could know how it feels to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. And I wish I could say all the things I want to say. I'd say them loud, I'd say them clear for the whole wide world to hear. I wish I could share all the love that's in my heart and break all those bars that keep us apart. And I wish you could know how it feels to be me. Then I'm sure you'd agree every man should be free. I wish I could give all I'm longing to give. And I wish I could live anywhere I want to live. And I wish I could do anything I'd like to do. But if since it's long overdue, I'll be starting anew. I wish I could be like a bird in the sky. Oh, how sweet it would be if I found out I could fly. I'd soar to the sun and look down at the sea, and then I'd sing. Oh, yes, I'd sing, I'd sing. Oh, yes, I'd sing, 'cause I know how it feels to be free. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Judge Gandin and Reverend Clark. They'll be available for local parties. Contact information will be up on the screen soon. Just kidding. I want to thank everybody for coming. Information Eddie shared and Albert Cook was just amazing. I asked that question to Albert Cook about the curriculum because I believe it's very important for us as residents and wherever we live in the country to find out what the history is in your own town, in your own country where you live. Some of our textbooks, we feel like it's just a blank history of everywhere in the country, and it's so different. People that live in New York are so different than the people that grew up in Alabama. People that live in Ulster County, a lot of people don't feel like there was ever slaves up here because we're in New York. You know, the slaves escaped to the north to escape slavery. Okay, well, it wasn't as bad as Mississippi and Alabama, but it was still slavery. And imagine the government saying, okay, now all slaves are free. Now what? Where do I go? I don't have a place to go. All the land where I live in is owned by white masters. So I'm free, but now what do I have put in place for me? So we've been struggling for a long time. And I just think education is so important for our young ones to learn what's going on in our county, in our town, and the country. So Eddie, I want to thank you for that very, very informative lesson there. So today, Juneteenth, serves as both a celebration of resilience and a call to action. It reminds us that true freedom encompasses not only the absence of slavery, but also the presence of equal rights, opportunities, and dignity for all. As we honor this day, let us reflect on our shared history and commit to dismantling the systematic barriers that continue to impede the full realization of human rights. The legacy of Juneteenth calls upon us to confront these injustices and work towards a society where human rights are upheld for all. It urges us to honor the past by actively engaging in the present to ensure a future where freedom and equality are not just ideals, but realities. As we commemorate Juneteenth, let us reflect on the progress made and acknowledge the work that remains. Let it inspire us to continue advocating for justice, dismantling systematic barriers, and fostering a culture of inclusivity and respect for human rights. As I close, I just want to say a quote from Martin Luther King. I always like to bring quotes up because sometimes they just really they're part of our history. And Martin Luther King has said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And that is so true. I just want to thank everybody in this room and who are listening that put the fight out every day to make this world a better place. And if anybody in our county has any discrimination issues, please reach out to the Human Rights Department of Ulster County, and we will do everything we can to help you. I want to thank everybody for coming, and God bless.